Have you ever been roped into playing amateur IT support for your family during a holiday dinner?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is practically a holiday tradition at this point.
Right. You're just sitting there trying to enjoy your meal, and suddenly you are tasked with fixing a relative's humming, uninspired gray box. Or maybe it's black, but they want you to fix it because they think it's, secretly plotting against them.
Like some rogue AI from a sci-fi movie.
Exactly. And as people who follow tech, we know that box isn't a rogue AI. But trying to explain how a computer actually works to someone who is genuinely intimidated by it, that is a completely different skill set.
It really is. It takes a lot of patience.
It does. So welcome to today's deep dive. We're looking at an absolute masterclass in tech communication today. We're pulling insights from the 2023 German edition of Dan Gookin's classic, PCs for Dummies, the 13th edition.
And Dan Gookin has been translating dense computer architecture into actual human language for over 3 decades now.
Which is no small feat.
No, not at all. And what makes this specific look so valuable isn't just a refresher on what a computer is. It is a complete breakdown of his framework for demystifying technology.
Yeah, the mission today is really to strip away all that gatekeeping jargon. We want to look at how to conceptualize machine logic in a way anyone can grasp.
Right.
And most practically, we're going to go through his foolproof 5-step method for buying a PC.
Which is a lifesaver. It really is the ultimate guide to proving that a computer is really just a highly obedient, rather dumb machine that's just sitting there waiting for your instructions.
I love looking at this from a communication standpoint. I mean, let's take the classic Hollywood hacking trope.
Oh, the exploding computer.
Yes. If you watch enough action movies, you would think that typing a password incorrectly triggers, like, a thermal detonator inside the case.
Sparks everywhere.
Computer sparks, smokes, plastic flies all over the room. And when you are trying to calm down a novice user, you have to actively debunk that cinematic magic.
Because they're actually afraid of breaking it physically. Gookin actually makes it a point to clearly state that unless the house is struck by lightning, or, I don't know, someone pours a liter of fruit juice directly into the ventilation shafts.
Which, please don't do that.
Right, don't do that. But unless that happens, a PC doesn't explode. When it suffers a critical failure, it usually just emits a sad little beep, flashes an error code, and quietly dies.
Just halts.
Yeah. Hollywood relies on visual stakes, but computer engineering relies on fail-safes.
That contrast is funny, but it really highlights a real psychological barrier for beginners, that fear of catastrophic physical breakage just from clicking the wrong icon on the desktop.
Breaking down that fear is step 1. And step 2 is getting past all the intimidating terminology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the name itself. We throw the term PC around constantly. But looking at the history of where that came from is a really great reminder of how far the hardware has actually come.
Yeah, because before they were personal computers, there were microcomputers.
Microcomputers. It's such a fantastically retro term.
It really is. It perfectly captures the mindset of the 1970s computing industry. Because at the time, computers were mainframes. They took up entire climate-controlled rooms.
Right, massive machines.
And they required teams of highly specialized engineers to operate. So when engineers finally miniaturized the architecture enough to fit on a single desk, they faced a massive marketing problem.
How do you sell it?
Exactly. The scientists in their white lab coats needed a term that sounded legitimate. They couldn't call it a tiny computer or an itty-bitty computer and expect enterprise buyers to take them seriously.
No, an enterprise buyer is not writing a check for an itty-bitty computer. Microcomputer sounds incredibly official.
It does. It leaned heavily on the invention of the microprocessor, which was the single chip doing the heavy lifting.
But that term obviously didn't stick around forever. The shift to PC was entirely driven by market dominance in the early 1980s.
Specifically in 1982, that was the year IBM released the IBM personal computer. By branding it that way, and more importantly, by building it with standardized, interchangeable hardware components, IBM set the template for the entire industry.
They changed the game.
They really did. Almost every Windows or Linux desktop machine sitting in an office today is a direct architectural descendant of that 1982 IBM model. The industry adopted the PC moniker because they were essentially all building IBM clones.
Which brings up one of the funniest, most enduring rivalries in tech.
Yeah.
Because technically, Apple Macintoshes are microcomputers designed for personal use.
Right.
They are, by definition, personal computers. They are PCs. But if you walk into a coffee shop and call someone's MacBook a PC, they might genuinely be offended.
Oh, they will break out in hives. Gookin actually jokes that you have his absolute permission to call those highly polished aluminum machines PCs anyway, just to see the reaction.
Just to mess with them a little.
Yeah. It is purely a triumph of 1990s and 2000s marketing. Apple spent millions on those Mac versus PC ad campaigns to position themselves as the cool alternative to the beige corporate IBM clones.
Yeah, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, guys.
Exactly. The irony, of course, is that under the hood, they have often used the exact same fundamental architectures. Like when Apple transitioned to Intel processors for a decade and a half, they were literally using PC brains.
Speaking of marketing, there's a much bigger architectural debate today, and it is one you definitely have to navigate when advising someone on what to buy. Why buy a bulky wired-in desktop PC when modern smartphones and tablets have more processing power than a 10-year-old laptop?
It comes down to a fundamental difference in how the platforms are engineered to handle data and user intent. Mobile devices like tablets and smartphones are heavily optimized for consumption.
Consumption, like watching videos.
Right. The touch interfaces, the aggressively managed background processes designed to save battery, the vertical screen orientation, it is all built to facilitate scrolling, watching, and reading.
They are essentially incredibly powerful receivers. But when you look at a PC, the entire paradigm shifts to creation and production.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really comes down to sustained performance and input flexibility. A desktop PC is plugged directly into the wall. It doesn't have to throttle its processor to save a lithium-ion battery.
We can just run at max speed.
Exactly. It has active cooling, meaning you can render a 4K video or compile code for hours without the machine melting. Furthermore, it supports deep, complex multitasking. A PC is designed to take simultaneous inputs from a tactile mechanical keyboard, a high-precision mouse, maybe a drawing tablet, and output it all across multiple high-resolution displays.
You can't comfortably write a novel, design a 3D modder, or manage a massive spreadsheet using your thumbs on a 6-inch glass screen. It just doesn't work.
No, it's a nightmare.
And the longevity factor is a huge part of this too. We are culturally conditioned to accept that a smartphone has a lifespan of about 2 to maybe 3 years before the battery degrades or the software gets bloated. But a well-built desktop PC is modular. It is meant to last for years because you can continually upgrade it.
That modularity is the real magic of the platform. But to take advantage of it, a user has to understand the two fundamental kingdoms of computing: hardware and software.
Gookin has a brilliant, slightly unhinged rule of thumb for teaching this concept to absolute beginners. It is the boomerang test.
I love this part.
It's so good. Hardware is the physical stuff. It is the components you can pick up and physically throw out a second-story window. And if you throw it out a window and it comes back, well, then it's a boomerang.
It is a great visual, the monitor, the motherboard, the graphics card, all the expensive silicon and plastic. But physical components, no matter how advanced, are completely inert on their own. They do nothing without instructions.
That is where the symphony orchestra analogy comes into play, which is arguably one of the best ways to explain the hardware-software relationship to someone who is lost.
Think of the hardware as the musicians and their physical instruments. You have a world-class violinist and a master timpanist sitting on stage. They have the physical capability to create incredible music, but without direction, they just sit there holding their instruments.
They need the sheet music.
Exactly. They need the sheet music, which represents the software applications, the word processors, the web browsers, the video games. The sheet music dictates the specific notes.
And sitting right at the podium, keeping the whole thing from devolving into absolute chaos, is the operating system. Windows, Mac OS, Linux. They act as the conductor.
The conductor is managing all the resources. When you move your physical mouse, the hardware generates an interrupt signal. The operating system, our conductor, receives that signal, tells the word processor to pause for a microsecond, updates the cursor position on the screen, and manages the memory allocation so the brass section doesn't play over the strings.
It orchestrates the entire flow.
The OS ensures that all the distinct hardware components are playing the same symphony at the same time.
So, what does this all mean when we get down to the absolute core equation of computing? If you strip away the graphical interfaces and the desktop icons, what is the conductor actually making the orchestra do? Gookin boils it down to a 3-step cycle: input, processing, and output.
That is the fundamental loop of all computing logic. The user provides input. A keystroke, a mouse click, a voice command. The system takes that raw data and routes it to the processor, the CPU.
The brain of the operation.
Right, the brain. The CPU executes mathematical operations to figure out what that input means within the context of the software. Then it pushes the result back into the physical world as output. That could be a letter appearing on your monitor, an audio alert playing through your speakers, or a command sent to a network printer.
But there is a crucial ghost in that machine, which is storage. If I type a document, where does it actually live during that input processing output loop? Trying to explain the difference between RAM and a hard drive is notoriously difficult because they are both technically called memory.
This is where Gookin introduces the physical desk versus the filing cabinet analogy, which remains incredibly relevant even as underlying technologies change. RAM, or random access memory, is the processor's active workspace. It is the physical surface of a desk.
Okay, the desk surface.
Yes. When you open a program or document, the computer pulls it out and lays it on the desk so the processor can work on it instantaneously. It is blazing fast, but it is volatile.
Volatile meaning the second you cut the power, the desk is wiped completely clean. Everything on it vanishes.
Precisely. If the power drops, the desk is cleared. To prevent that, you need permanent, non-volatile storage. Historically, this was a mechanical hard drive with spinning magnetic platters. Today, it is usually an SSD, a solid-state drive, which uses flash memory with no moving parts.
But the function is identical.
Exactly. Whether it is an old spinning disk or a modern SSD, its role is the same. It is the filing cabinet sitting in the corner of the office. When you hit the save button, the computer takes the data from the temporary space of the RAM disk and files it securely away in the permanent cabinet. When you reboot the machine tomorrow, the data is waiting in the cabinet, ready to be pulled back onto the desk.
I love how that visualization scales perfectly, whether you are talking to an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old. Once you understand how the data flows inside the machine, you have to deal with the physical box itself. And let's be honest, PC console design is largely utilitarian. Gookin makes the observation that nobody in the year 2095 is going to be hanging vintage posters of 2020's PC cases on their bedroom walls.
They are really just variations of rectangular prisms.
Yeah.
You have the mini tower, which is the standard upright box sitting under the desk. You have desktop models that lie flat, often acting as a monitor stand. Then you have the more integrated forms, the all-in-ones, where the entire computer is crammed into the back of the display casing, or the two-in-one tablets that blur the line between mobile and PC.
And regardless of the form factor, there has been a slow, painful evolution in how manufacturers design the physical interfaces. For decades, PC makers put every important slot, port, and sometimes even the power button on the back of the machine.
Which made absolutely no sense.
None. Users had to physically drag this heavy, dusty box out from under a desk, grab a flashlight, and fumble blindly through a nest of cables just to plug in a simple thumb drive.
It was incredibly user-hostile design. Thankfully, the industry shifted. Modern consoles prioritize putting essential interfaces on the front panel. You usually have immediate access to power, audio jacks, and a few USB ports right where you can see them.
But the most critical feature on the physical casing isn't a port at all. It's the ventilation.
Oh, the vents are crucial.
A PC is basically a very localized space heater. It has to breathe. There is an unforgettable anecdote from Gookin's work about a reader living in a tropical climate. This user shoved their PC into a tight, enclosed desk cabinet in a highly humid room.
This is a horror story.
It really is. Because there was zero airflow to dissipate the heat and cycle the moisture, they actually grew literal mold inside the computer chassis. It turned the motherboard into a biology experiment.
Thermal dynamics are no joke. Processors generate massive amounts of heat under heavy load. If that heat cannot escape the chassis, the system will thermally throttle, meaning it intentionally slows itself down to prevent the silicon from literally melting.
It's trying to save its own life.
Exactly. Gookin notes that PCs operate best in ambient temperatures between 4 and 27 degrees Celsius. They need clearance. Pushing a tower flush against a wall or locking it in an unventilated wooden cabinet is a guaranteed way to kill the hardware prematurely.
So the front needs to breathe. But the back of the console is still where the heavy lifting happens. The I/O panel, the input-output panel. To someone who isn't tech-savvy, this panel looks like a terrifying, chaotic grid of identical metal holes. But there is a standardized logic to it, mostly through color coding.
The industry relies heavily on visual cues to prevent users from forcing the wrong cable into the wrong slot. Audio ports are a classic example. The light green jack is universally recognized as the analog line out for your main desktop speakers or your headphones. Pink is almost always the microphone input.
But the most vital visual distinction on a modern I/O panel concerns the USB ports. because all standard USB ports look identical mechanically, but they do not behave identically.
Right. You will notice that some of the rectangular USB Type-A ports have a blue plastic insert inside them, while others are just black. That blue color coding indicates a USB 3.0 port, or a higher generation. It signifies high-speed data transfer capabilities, utilizing more PCIe lanes on the motherboard.
And Gookin emphasizes a major pro tip here regarding resource management. You have to match the peripheral to the port's capability.
Exactly. You want to reserve those high bandwidth blue ports for devices that actually need to move massive amounts of data quickly, like an external solid-state backup drive or a high-resolution 4K webcam. A basic wired keyboard or a standard optical mouse requires almost zero bandwidth.
So plugging a mouse into a high-speed blue port is a complete waste of system resources.
Yes. Put the mouse and keyboard into the standard black USB 2.0 ports and save the fast lanes for the heavy traffic.
It is all about optimizing the setup. And speaking of getting set up, Gookin offers a survival guide for that initial unboxing phase. These are the rules you should definitely pass along to anyone you are helping. Rule number 1, unbox everything first and break down the packaging.
Because manufacturers love to hide proprietary power bricks, Wi-Fi antennas, or vital display cables in secret cardboard compartments.
They always bury the one cable you need. Rule number 2 is about spatial awareness. Do not immediately shove the console into its final resting place under the desk. Leave it out in the open with plenty of slack so you can easily manage the cable routing. You need room to work before you finalize the positioning.
And the cardinal rule of setup: power comes last.
Always.
It sounds obvious, but so many people plug the tower into the wall outlet immediately. You always connect the peripherals, the monitor, the keyboard, the mouse, the network cable. You connect all of that to the console first. Only after the entire ecosystem is physically connected do you plug the main power cable into the surge protector and turn it on.
It is basic electrical safety to avoid grounding issues.
Whoa!
But it also ensures that the motherboard's basic input-output system, the BIOS, recognizes all the attached hardware during its very first power-on self-test.
Right, you want the system to see everything the first time it wakes up.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting. Let's pivot to the buying process. When an average consumer decides they need a new computer, the default behavior is to walk into a big box electronics retailer, look at the wall of shiny monitors, get completely overwhelmed by the spec sheets, and eventually just buy whatever brand name they recognize that fits their budget.
Which is the worst way to do it.
Gookin argues that this entire approach is entirely backward and practically guarantees buyer's remorse.
Retail environments are designed to upsell. They push machines with flashy RGB lighting and massive amounts of RAM that the average user will never actually utilize. To combat this, Gookin lays out a highly pragmatic 5-step buying method that completely bypasses retail psychology.
Let's hear it.
Step 1. Before you ever look at a piece of hardware or even visit a website, sit down and determine your exact workflow requirements.
You have to know the objective. The machine you need to merely type emails and manage a household budget is fundamentally, structurally different from a machine required to edit multi-track 4K video or run modern 3D rendering engines.
Buying a high-end gaming rig to check your email is like buying a Formula One race car to commute 3 blocks to the grocery store. It is an enormous waste of capital. Once you define the workflow, you move to step 2. Identify the specific software applications that accomplish those tasks.
So if your goal is professional photo editing, you identify Adobe Photoshop or Lightroom. If your goal is financial modeling, you identify Microsoft Excel. The software is what brings the hardware to life.
And identifying the software makes step 3 incredibly objective. Step 3 is looking at the minimum and recommended hardware requirements published by the software developer. Adobe or Microsoft will explicitly tell you. To run this program smoothly, you need an Intel Core i7 processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and 50 gigabytes of solid-state storage.
Suddenly, you aren't guessing anymore. The software dictates the hardware. It turns a subjective emotional shopping trip into a rigid checklist.
It takes all the anxiety out of reading those spec sheets. Once you have that checklist, step 4 focuses on the vendor. Where do you buy it? Gookin heavily emphasizes the value of a dealer with robust, accessible support, especially for non-technical users.
This is a huge consideration. You can often find a cheaper price by ordering a machine from a faceless online clearinghouse. But when a component fails, and eventually a component will fail, who handles the warranty?
If you are advising a family member who isn't comfortable troubleshooting driver issues, paying a slight premium at a local shop or a vendor with exceptional customer service is worth its weight in gold. You are buying a support relationship, not just a box of silicon.
Which leads us to the final hurdle. Step 5. Just buy it. Pull the trigger.
Yes, don't wait.
There is a notorious fallacy in tech consumerism where people hold off on buying a system because they read a rumor that a faster, better processor is launching in 6 months. Gookin makes a brilliant point here. Due to the rapid iteration cycles of the tech industry, there is always a better machine coming out next month. If you wait for the ultimate future-proof PC, you will be waiting for the rest of your life.
Technology is inherently ephemeral. Buy the machine that meets your software requirements today and accept that it will eventually age.
But when it does age, what happens to it? You run the 5 steps, you bring home the new machine. What is the afterlife of the old PC? E-waste is a massive global issue, and you can't just toss a desktop tower into a municipal dumpster.
The first phase of the afterlife should always be reuse. A quality monitor, a mechanical keyboard, and a good mouse can easily outlast 3 or 4 generations of PC consoles. By carrying your peripherals forward, you drastically reduce your e-waste footprint and save a significant amount of money by only purchasing the tower itself.
But eventually, the core console has to go. You could drop it at an electronics recycling center or donate it to a school program. However, Gookin issues a massive blinking red light security warning for this stage. You have to handle the storage drive.
This is entirely non-negotiable. Whether it is an old spinning hard drive or a modern SSD, that component contains your entire digital identity. Tax returns, banking passwords, personal correspondence, family photos. Deleting the files or formatting the drive through the operating system is not enough. Data recovery tools can easily resurrect that information.
You have to physically open the case, unscrew the drive, and pull it out of the machine before you recycle the rest of the hardware. And Gookin jokes that if you have highly sensitive data, perhaps you are an investigative journalist or you're planning a future presidential run, the only true security is physical destruction. Take a hammer and a drill to the drive platters or the flash memory chips. It sounds extreme, but physical destruction is the only absolute guarantee against data harvesting.
It is a stark reminder of how much trust we place in these magnetic platters and silicon chips. The hardware holds our entire lives.
Which brings this entire deep dive full circle. Despite the terrifying warning about destroying hard drives with hammers, despite the intimidating I/O panels and the complex symphony of processors and RAM, the PC is not a magical entity. It is a highly efficient, incredibly literal tool. It only executes the sheet music it is given. It's waiting for the software, and ultimately, it is waiting for you, the user, to tell it what to do.
Demystifying the machine empowers the user. When you understand the architecture, the fear of the gray box simply evaporates. You are the boss.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought regarding that exact dynamic, pulled straight from the back pages of Gookin's book. He includes a physical Schummel site, a cheat sheet. He actively instructs the reader to print this page out on actual paper. It contains blank lines to physically write down your PC's technical specs, your router login, your ISP customer service number, and, amusingly, your favorite ice cream flavor.
It is a brilliant analog backup. When your network crashes and your screen goes black, a digital password manager is entirely useless. You need the hard copy.
But think about the profound irony of that reality. We exist in a civilization that entrusts our global economy, our personal identities, our businesses, and our communications to incredibly complex, multi-billion-dollar digital infrastructure. We carry supercomputers in our pockets and beam data to satellites. And yet the ultimate unbreakable failsafe to prevent you from being permanently locked out of your own hyper-advanced digital life is a piece of dead tree and a ballpoint pen. Something to chew on the next time you clear off your desk and glance at that humming gray box. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.